We're going to go into our next talk. We have special guests that are dedicated to sustainability, particularly green clubbing. There are the Clubliebe e.V. and Clubtopia, and I'm going to have the lovely Konstanze Meyer here. They say about themselves that there is a climate issue within the Berlin club scene. The goal is to raise awareness again, but now on raising awareness with the people on how we're using not sustainable things like plastic in the club context, and they believe that the potential to create solutions is definitely there in a city like Berlin. At the same time, clubs, venues, parties, festivals can also positively contribute, and so their project, Clubliebe e.V., is definitely another lighthouse project that we're going to present. So welcome, Konstanze. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Let's have a little change of setting. I'm going to go this way.
All right.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What is Clubliebe e.V.? What is Clubtopia? How did it start? And yeah, just tell us a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm Konstanze. I'm currently working for Clubtopia project, which aims to really make nightlife more sustainable and mostly eco-friendly and climate-friendly. And so Clubtopia is a joint project of Clubliebe, BUND, so Friends of the Earth, and of course Club Commission. And to my background, I'm actually I have a master's in sustainable tourism, so I always try to make leisure time of people more sustainable, so including nightlife.
Mm-hmm. So when exactly was Clubliebe e.V., like for people who don't know the project yet, or Clubtopia started? So how many years has it been, or like, is it project-based, etc.? Could you go a bit more into detail for people?
Sure. Clubliebe actually is the association we founded, but actually we started in 2011 with the initiative Club Mob Berlin. So it was a small initiative, and we really started out because we wanted to try things. And I only joined in 2013. And with that initiative, what we did was do energy consulting with clubs and venues. And then afterwards, we organized parties so they have the funds to actually implement sustainability measures. So that's what we started with. And with the years, it has grown, and we funded the Clubliebe e.V. in 2014.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yes.
What would you say, given that my personal perception is that Berlin is pretty green? Like there is a, as I said, my perception, maybe not in nightlife so much, because I also know other places, but given that most of my friends, they bike to work, nobody owns a car, we use the train to travel, not all the time, but a lot of times, specifically in Germany. But when we're talking nightlife, like how aware about their energy waste or their resources waste is Berlin club culture?
Actually, it might depend who you ask. So on the one side, I think that people in Berlin, a lot of them have a really good green conscious, so they use public transport or have, I don't know, energy from renewable sources, and have a green conscious and lifestyle. And a lot of clubs also do have that. So they have the motivation to actually become greener and know maybe a few things they can do. But of course, I think that there still needs to be done a lot more.
Okay, so how can I imagine your work? Like how does it work? Does the club approach you? Do you approach the clubs? Do you get input from guests? Like, could you go a little bit more into these details?
Yeah, so actually more and more it is the clubs who approach us. When we started in 2011, I think there were only a few pioneer clubs who have even thought about that. For example, SO36, with whom we started in 2011. But now, in the last few years, we really feel that there's much more interest. So clubs really come to us and ask if they have if they can have either energy consulting or if they can, if they can participate in workshops. But there are also a lot of interested club guests and really people who are involved in nightlife in a general way. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a bit out right now. Talking about like the Fridays for Future movement, a lot of young people that are just becoming of age to go out and party, that are, you know, using their Friday, or they don't go to school to protest for the climate. Like, do you see like a specific interest for that niche of, in it's not a niche, but like in sense of like consideration of nightlife in their protesting, or?
I don't think that it has like it still is a niche, but I think that a lot of people who actually are participating in that movement do go to clubs and do go to festivals. I'd say there's a lot of common ground. So it's just that the matter as such is not as developed in their what they put to the outside. So yeah.
Would there, like, I would assume that, especially when we're talking festivals, that there is a lot of festivals that are not yet close, especially considering plastic. I know from my from my festival experiences last year, that most people actually clean up after themselves. You have your trash bag and you go all over the place and just collect. But wouldn't that be like a little bit of a paradoxon to go to festivals that are still like allowing a lot of plastic and, you know, and to be celebrating while you're protesting every Friday for the climate?
So what you mean is that people who are protesting for climate shouldn't go to festivals?
Not necessarily, but like in the sense that it produces a lot of waste. And I know that there's festivals that are more aware than others, I guess.
Yeah.
But knowing from my experience when I was like 18, you don't really care when you want to celebrate.
Yeah.
So in that context, like if there's not like this particular interest in nightlife and climate, but how does it work, you know, going out to clubs that you have your shots in a little plastic cup, or and I know there's a lot of clubs still doing it. I'm not saying it's good, but how does it go with your own perception of this project, or also from what you hear from guests that are aware of this?
I think there used to be a time when it wasn't that, when people weren't so aware and when all they wanted to do was really clear their mind and go out and have fun and really enjoy nightlife without thinking about tomorrow. But I think that's not the case anymore. So even if you have a green conscience, of course it can happen that you go to a festival and sort of have to deal with plastic waste or bad energy consumption too much, or so you still have to live with that a little bit until it changes. But of course, as a festival guest, as a club guest, you can change that. You have a certain impact. So, for example, if you don't even bring so much waste yourself, that's one aspect. Instead of just, you know, taking the trash bag and everything, then just don't bring it to the festival, don't bring it in when you go out. But also on the other hand, guests depend on what happens in club culture and what happens on the festival, so what actually the organizers do. So it's both ways. They have to work together in order to really bring up a change, and until that, I think you kind of have to live with that.
I see. When you've been mentioning the energy consumption, right? How does, like, okay, so I approach you and I want to be consulted around my energy consumption.
Yeah.
How does that work? Like, do you look at my energy bill and you tell me, oh, you could switch to this provider and you will save money, or does it? Yeah, what does it entail, basically?
Yeah, well, actually, that's the first and really an important step. It sounds really stupid, but really our look is what kind of energy a club gets, because it really makes a huge difference what kind of energy. If it's coal energy or nuclear energy, then of course the carbon emissions, no matter how much energy you save, they will always be higher than if you have like a real green energy supplier. So, and there are a lot of fake green energy suppliers out there, and that's really why I think it's not that easy for you as a consumer or for clubs as energy consumers to really find out the right one. So they really have, so that's the first step that we do with them, and it really has the biggest impact on their carbon footprint. But then of course there are a lot of other things and a lot of detail. That's really a lot of detailed work afterwards. Honestly, we count light bulbs.
Light bulbs.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Yeah, that would be a lot.
Yeah. So sometimes that's quite a lot. And we have a look at the fridges, at the heating and the cooling system, and at the waste disposal and everything. So it's really a lot of detail work we do. And after that, we of course we don't put anyone in the corner and say shame on you. We just we collect everything. We make a footprint, and at the end we always suggest measures on how to improve the carbon footprint in the end.
When I think, I'm not alone with that, when I think about becoming sustainable, I think a lot of people connect it directly with a lot of cost. And given that clubs are always tight on money, apparently, that's our story, has been forever, it's probably going to be forever. How does it, like, once they see their footprint and you present them with other options, aside from maybe switching providers and might have even a less of a bill in the end, how do you find, does that show in the clubs? Are they willing to actually change and invest? Because a lot of these things, maybe even like the heating, like the, thinking about these clubs that are built themselves as well and so on, like, how does that work? Like, is the commitment to go through with it? Like, is it there?
Well, the commitment is there, but as you said, the money is not always there. So it's the big hurdle sometimes. It's really the money, and of course, it also depends on the perspective of a club. If they know I will stay here for another 10 years, then of course it's really worth investing in a new heating system, or maybe have like bigger investments, because you know that in a few years it will come back to you because your energy bill is lower. But for smaller venues or sort of DIY venues, of course, we suggest a lot of measures that don't necessarily are such big investments. So, for example, LED lighting is not that expensive anymore, and it really gets back to you really quickly. And same for fridges. They well, then it depends on how many you have, but sometimes it's just turning or switching a few of those off and getting rid of them. You don't need to pay anything for that. You just need to take a little time, bring them, and get them away, and that's it. So we really focus on those like small measures that don't cost so much money, but that can be implemented pretty easily.
Now we see like there's funding from the Senate of Environment, and there's other partners that you have. Like, how does the collaboration and the funding work? Like,
so first about the funding, we have the luck that Berlin has set itself a goal to become carbon neutral, and that there is funding. It's a program, a special program for a lot of carbon neutral measures in order to become actually carbon neutral. And we're lucky that a carbon neutral clubbing scene is part of that program, and that's why we get funding from Senate for climate protection. And and the other partners that are involved, so we actually try to gather organizations from both sides, so really from club culture such as Club Commission and Livecom, but also from sustainability, so Clubliebe e.V., BUND, really to get in the climate reduction knowledge, and also we get a university involved who supports us with knowledge, and we all try to work together really to have a good communication and to reach really those who we want to reach.
Is there like, do you involve like students or universities or all these partners into envisioning completely new ways of clubbing? Is that also part of your sustainable nightlife project?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one important part of our project is so the innovation part. So where we really try to get people together, creating new ideas, because we know there's creative potential in the clubbing scene, and there's a lot of knowledge in the sustainability corner, so to speak, and we try to bring those together so they bring up new ideas, and that's why we created together with Club Commission the Future Party Labs, so where they really work in labs together, and we also have a contest linked to that where people can send in their good ideas on how to make nightlife greener.
Okay, and once they send that in, does some of them actually get to another stage? Like, is it just a vision board, or is there maybe a project that you could tell us about that was actually?
Well, the contest is still running, so we are really, we're happy to have more projects coming in. So I cannot talk about those who came in already.
Yeah, okay. Making it exciting for us.
Yeah. So that's still running until the end of August, and people can send us their ideas. And
where can they send them to?
To Clubliebe e.V. directly, and we have on our clubtopia.de site, we have a lot of information in German and English, so, and it's really easy to, that's just a small form, you can fill it out, and it's pretty easy to participate. And like those ideas, they can be anything from like new event concepts to activism concepts or new technologies or anything that people come up with that really reduces the carbon footprint of nightlife. Yeah.
So you already talked a little bit about it, but we have a question from the crowd, and they are asking again, how can I as a guest make clubbing greener? What can I as a Röber actually do?
So as a guest, of course, one important factor is the your own mobility, how you get to the club. So that means if you use public transport, or if you walk, or if you take maybe a ride share, or even your bike, then of course that's a perfect start for the evening. And of course also the way you behave around the club, if you litter or if you just drop your cigarette butts, well, consider that, because it has an impact on the environment but also on the neighborhood. So if it's always littered around the club, then the club will be more likely to be pushed out of that area. And then of course, moving forward to the bar, you can ask for local beverages, and you can support like smaller businesses instead of always having the usual suspects who have also a big impact. Because what people sometimes don't know is that big breweries have a huge impact on on the clubs themselves, because they provide fridges. So the fridges they provide often are not energy efficient, and so if you ask for different beverages, then you sort of take the power away from those companies who sort of force clubs to be unecological.
So sorry, I was a little bit distracted. So how can a club owner or a person that wants to go to a greener club force these beverage companies to have greener fridges, like newer fridges, or how would that work?
Yeah, well, actually, mostly it's not necessarily just newer fridges, but those who are more energy efficient, meaning they have like a good A, B, or C rating, and that's usually not because they are sometimes provided for free by the breweries. Then the clubs cannot choose, but there's a lot of hidden costs. Just give you an example. What we see a lot are those small fridges with maybe 20 cans inside. You know the kinds of cans I mean.
Yes, we're not going to name them right now.
No names. But these fridges, they're really small, and they have the same energy consumption as a big fridge, which has like more than your height. So really,
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, like it's like one household in a year has that fridge. So it's really lot of hidden costs. And if you as a club guest, to get back to the question, if you as a club guest actually ask for different beverages, then the club will change its beverage offer.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yep. Speaking of littering, I don't want to call it littering, but when we speak in clubs and festivals, there's also the question of sound, right? And that some people feel disturbed by sound, and that is also a factor in terms of like how clubs have to move and so on. Is that part of your research and consultation, like how they could make their places more efficient in terms of the soundproof, or
No,
Not
to
at
be
all.
honest, no, we don't do that. But what we see is that sometimes measures that make the club more soundproof also do good for the insulation. So the heat doesn't go out in the winter, of course. In the summer, that would be welcome. But yeah, in the winter, it also is a kind of insulation which helps the club to actually save energy. But we don't specialize in this kind of consulting.
When we're speaking, I mean, we're going to have a little bit more talk about urban planning and spaces a little bit later on. But when we're speaking like spaces, and we consider like a lot of the clubs at this point still are self-made, like out of wood, etc. Like
Yeah.
from the perspective of Clubtopia or Clubliebe e.V., is that something you say that's good for the sustainability, or is that rather a negative because of the heating that goes out in winter, because of the whole place being set up more for an outside space, but also being used in winter a lot of times?
Yeah. Well, I think there's positive and negative aspects. So what's positive about it is that those kind of clubs just work with the resources they have. So they don't have a lot of money, so they sort of have to deal with what they find around them. And sometimes it's wood they find somewhere, or reused wood, or things taken from other places. So it's reused, refurbished, recycled, and that's actually really great. But yeah, sometimes these kind of places, especially those charming wooden shacks, they have like really bad insulation, and then if you put like some kind of heating in the corner, and so people don't freeze, it really sums up to a lot of energy which is wasted, and that could be done better. So, but still, I really like that idea that you just work with what you have, because yeah, if you don't take any.
That's good. I'm going to let you get to your little talk. Thank you so much.
All right. So I'm really happy to talk a little bit more about our project Clubtopia. And to start off, actually, I wanted to just start with a little quote, actually a picture I took in a French nightclub a few years ago, and it was a neon sign saying "Le monde est à toi," the world is yours. And actually, in a way, I like that quote, because it really describes that feeling when you go into a club, that you have the world at your feet and the world is yours. But I think this kind of feeling also leads to negative impacts, especially when we talk about climate change. So that's why I'm really happy to talk a little bit more about sustainable resource usage in nightlife. And first of all, introduce why we even talk about sustainability in nightlife, and if clubbers want nightlife to become greener, and what our project does to making nightlife greener, and what clubs actually can do to make it greener. So, as we've talked before, clubs have quite an important carbon footprint. So that means they have high energy consumption. To give you an example, one middle-sized club uses as much energy on one weekend as one single household does in a year, so that's quite a lot. And also a lot of clubs, as I mentioned before, don't use renewable energy suppliers, and so there's a lot of things to change there as well. And of course they emit heat, dust and noise, but at the same time clubs are great places. They bring people together, they have them, yeah, there's art coming out of those clubs or happening in these clubs, and so they're really important cultural places. And that's why we think that club culture can be a chance for sustainability as well. So we would like to actually add the cultural dimension to this well-known sustainability triangle, meaning that we do not only need to preserve culture for future generations, so preserve club spaces, preserve free spaces for culture, but at the same time we can use really clubs to get sustainability across to people, use them as a vehicle with art, with artists, with music, to have people change their minds about sustainability. And a lot of people tell us that club goers, when they go out at night, they don't really care about sustainability. They don't want to know about climate change. They want to just switch off their minds and don't think about it. But actually, I wanted to know more about that, and that's why I asked over 500 club guests and did a small survey on those, and asked them if well, about their behavior towards sustainability, their attitude, and if they want nightlife to become greener. And actually, the findings were quite surprising on one side, because clubbers actually have a very sustainable lifestyle in their daily life, and they also want clubs to become more sustainable and want to contribute to this. So even if ecological, well, the ecological aspect still isn't top priority. So all the aspect about gentrification, that's usually much more important. But really the findings show that people who go to clubs really want them to change and also want to contribute. And what I also found out is that clubbers really can be involved in making nightlife greener, and that really depends on how often they go into clubs, how positive the attitude towards sustainability is, and how often they do sustainable actions in their daily life. So some of them are really highly involved and want to contribute more, and some might just do small steps. So that's the side of the clubbers. So we've seen that action needs to be taken, that guests want sustainability and ecological change in nightlife. But what we need is, well, to support actually clubs in becoming greener, and that's why we've created Clubtopia, the project. And that's why we bring together people from nightlife and sustainability in the innovation labs I've mentioned before, the future party labs, and our idea competition. And of course, we've created the roundtables, which are there really to help club runners, club organizers, event organizers set their own goals and to create a code of conduct which helps them to become energy efficient, waste-free, and really have them set really ambitious goals. But also, as I mentioned before, we do energy consulting and go on site and really give tips on how to become greener. And for those clubs that we cannot visit, we have created the Green Club Guide, which is an online guide for sustainability in club. So what can clubs do to become to do responsible resource usage? Well, I would like to take you a little bit through a typical club evening and show you what clubs can do in which part of the night. So of course you need to get to the doors, get to the club, and of course an important aspect here is how you get there. So I mentioned before, taking public transport is quite important, and clubs can also promote public transport as a good option. They can also make biking or cycling to the club safer by providing safe space for the bikes to deposit. And of course, promote climate-friendly modes of transport. And in addition to that, what clubs can also do is when they do their booking, consider carbon offsetting. If they need to fly in any DJs or artists, then of course carbon offsetting could be one option if they cannot avoid the flight. And finally, clubs can also rethink their own way of transportation. So how often do they run errands? What kind of vehicle they use, if they could maybe replace it with a cargo bike, for example. So I usually, when I go to the club, my first run is to the toilet, because I've waited a little bit in line, and some might say they go to the bar first. Well, I'm going to start with the toilet, and therefore we need to talk about water usage in the clubs. So especially at the beginning, it could be really helpful for a club to, first of all, check their water consumption, which is easy. You can find it on your bill, and check how much water you use. And what is important, it is definitely worth saving water because it saves money. And it also saves energy because the water doesn't have to be heated if you don't use it. So also one important aspect is to really check on any leaks you might find in the tap, in the toilet. So it's really a lot of detail work, but it can really sum up. For example, if you have a leak, you can use up to 2,000 euros a year, which is really a lot. And of course, also you think about the water that comes out, water that runs away after you've used it. You can avoid aggressive chemicals when cleaning the club after the party, using natural ingredients such as vinegar or baking soda, and really produce your own cleaning products. And then, of course, fun place, the bar. And there we really need to talk about the cooling. As I mentioned before, freezers are often provided either as hand-me-downs from other clubs, or provided by beverage companies or breweries. And they are usually not really energy efficient. And that's why we often suggest to either replace those, shut them down, or use them in a different way. So that means that you can, for example, put them somewhere else, then instead of putting them close to a hot, like for example heating, or not putting them close to a window. So they really should be in a cold place in order not to lose so much energy. And also the small fridges I mentioned before, often they have a really high energy consumption, and you might not even realize it as a club runner. So that's really sometimes really invisible, so difficult to find. And in addition to that, on the dance floor, the lighting. So I've talked about LED before, which is usually not that expensive and which can reduce your energy consumption of light by 85%, which is really a lot. And of course, LED also has the advantage that the artists and people on the dance floor don't get too hot, because it doesn't bring out any heat. And then, of course, as a club runner who has outdoor area, you can also check if your outdoor lighting is harmful to any insects or birds, or use also little gadgets which help you shut the light down when you don't need it. So, for example, motion detectors help you find out when you don't need the light. And then, of course, well, zero waste is kind of a buzzword, and when people think about waste, they often think about recycling, separating your waste, and which is really important. But I think what is much more important is what comes before. So really thinking about all the waste that you produce, and rethinking your processes, rethinking the products you buy. So from plastic cups to straws, to, I don't know, any kind of packaging that you don't need. So rethinking what you buy and why you buy it. And then, of course, refusing, for example, promotional material from other companies. That's one good thing to really avoid waste. And then, of course, reusing, repairing, all that's important to reduce your waste production. And of course, what we always suggest is not to use any single-use plastic, even if it's bioplastic, which to us really is not a good solution, because it doesn't really change the behavior. And in addition to that, of course, you can buy in bulk or do your own, for example, cleaning products, so that you don't have a lot of packaging. And then, when the party is over, of course, club owners have a look at their energy bill, and that sometimes can be a bad surprise, especially when the summer was warm and you had to run a lot of fridges. Then sometimes the surprise is not so good after the winter, after the summer. But you can easily change your carbon footprint and really reduce it by changing the energy supplier. And what we suggest is the Grüner Strom label or the OK Power label, which helps you find a good and a renewable energy supplier. And for the more advanced clubs, of course, you can place solar panels on the roof. And now there are even models that don't use any investment from yourself, but you have other investors who just use the space and you still get the energy. And so you don't even need to pay for it yourself. And of course, what sometimes clubs and even as a household people tend to forget is that the heating makes up a lot of your energy consumption as well. So starting with a good insulation of the building, of the doors, of the windows is a good start to reduce that heating energy consumption. And finally, but really not least, communication is such an important aspect of becoming a greener club, because you really can actually brag about what you've achieved so far and really tell your guests, look, I have a green energy supplier, we've reduced our waste by this, and you can help us become even better. So really communicate what you've already done, but also celebrate really what you've done and motivate people to do more themselves. So that's really a good help to get your guests involved as well. And what's also important, that sometimes club runners think they have to do it all themselves, but they can easily get their team and all their stakeholders involved and really have them provide them with knowledge and also empower this team, because they need to be able to make decisions. They need a small funding in order to really implement sustainability measures, and that's why the team and involving the team and communicating is so important when we talk about sustainability. But really think about that communication is not everything. What we see sometimes is that clubs or festivals, the first thing they think about when talking about sustainability is the communication. It is important, but it shouldn't turn into the point that it comes as greenwashing. So really, of course, you can communicate what you're doing, but you need to do something first. So, in conclusion, actually, I would like to get back to the quote I had at the beginning, Le monde est à toi, the world is yours. And I would like to add, the world is yours, but the world is yours to take care of. And that doesn't stop when we go to nightlife, when we go out at night.
Danke, Konstanze, für deinen Vortrag. Jetzt sind gar nicht so viele Fragen gestellt worden bisher, aber erzähl uns doch noch mal so ein bisschen über das Tool, was du gerade vorgestellt hast.
Okay. Sollen wir auf Deutsch oder auf Englisch weitermachen?
We can switch to English, actually. Sorry,
Okay.
it's a bit confusing for me sometimes.
So, actually what I presented now was a small extract of our Green Club Guide, which is published on Club Commission's Keats Toolbox. So it's really an online guide for clubs and venues to become greener, and everything is detailed. We will also have small video clips, so tutorial videos, who will be published in autumn. And so that was created in 2015, and now we've done like a rework. We've updated all the contents and really give it a new look and content, of course.
Given the Corona context as well, have you found that clubs were approaching you during this time, thinking now is the best time? I have 3 months, what we didn't know at the time, obviously, to become greener or to actually dive deeper into becoming more sustainable?
To be honest with you, not really. And I can totally understand why. Of course, we do still get, we have running, especially energy consultings that run on, and we had a few requests, but not as much as before, because of course, if you don't know your perspective for the upcoming half year, how can you even think about sustainability? Because sustainability means thinking about tomorrow, and if you don't know what your tomorrow looks like, but still, what we get as a response from a lot of clubs is that they haven't lost interest in the subject. It's really important still, and they're still really motivated, but right now the main focus is to survive. And for some, of course, it could be important to actually have more training, get more knowledge, and that's why we will put out the Green Club Guide soon. So it's especially for the club runners, it's difficult now because they have to think on how to survive, and then afterwards they can think a bit more into the future, and future in that means just half a year or whatever. So yeah.
So for your work in short term, does that mean that you're going to focus on like putting out these tutorials, like building your knowledge, and then you're going to come back in forest for the winter, and are hoping like that there's going to be more security or certainty on what the new club world will look like, as we don't know yet.
Yeah, well, we keep on working, and we keep on, promoting ways on how to become greener, and of course we will continue with events that offer knowledge. It's just that especially for bigger events, well, it's not really a good time right now. So, but actually we continue working, and our doors are wide open for anyone who wants
to get greener.
Yeah, who wants to get greener. And also what we think is that especially for our idea contest, now is a good time, because some people really have the time to think about those ideas and really get them into shape. And then maybe once times look a little bit more positive, they can get those on the road and really realize those.
On a personal note, I think what a lot of people have also experienced is usually you spend half your day at least outside, at work, in clubs, in parks, whatever, and that will definitely affect all of us, like thinking about the water bill or the electricity bill that a lot of us will be getting at the end of the year. It will be a different story.
Yeah.
So when you go out of the club context, like thinking about my home, like, is there anything that you would say, is it the same in terms of like approaching being more sustainable or becoming more green? As I said, like a lot of people think it's connected to a lot of costs, but like you mentioned light bulbs, is there anything that I could do to be more sustainable in my everyday life?
Well, there's always a lot of things, and it's actually quite similar to what I presented for the clubs. But what has, of course, become less important with the pandemics we have right now is mobility, because people don't travel so far. They usually don't take planes if they don't have to at some point, and so mobility which usually is quite a huge part, but now it has become less important on your personal carbon impact, because I guess you won't do any like long-term or long distance flight this year. But then at home, of course, what you can do is check your energy provider.
Yes, I will.
Now you have the
After
time.
today, I will.
Yeah, it's like doing your tax thing is always something you push away, but it's really not that complicated. It's easy to do and has a huge impact. Then, of course, you can, now it's a good time to take the time to actually, for example, do your own cleaning products out of like a few ingredients, and checking on how you do your waste at home, how much you have, and if you can change anything about that. And then, of course, well, you could take the time to do small things to improve your insulation at home, like especially for the windows or for the doors, which will become handy in autumn. And then, of course, which is much more important right now, like all the streaming. I mean, really happy for clubs to stream their music out of the clubs, but streaming does have a huge energy impact, and it has a huge impact on carbon emissions, and people tend to forget because it's not visible, but it really is.
Could you elaborate a little bit, like in terms of, is it the electricity that we are using right now to produce the stream, or is it, you know, what exactly is?
It's a mix. So really, it's internet. Then it's your display, and then of course it's all the servers where you need all that data volume is stored, because they run hot, and then they need to be cooled, and then they just need to be held at the right temperature. They need to run on and run, and then there's Notfall, like emergency
generators.
Yeah,
or whatever.
so and really that does take a lot of energy. So I think even some people have established or found data that it's less it's more climate friendly to buy a CD than actually streaming music online all the time. So which sounds contradictory.
Yeah, nobody really thinks about all the servers, like considering that our lives have been mostly on Zoom, or not making any advertising here, or any other providers for streaming and so on.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like already foreseeable that it will take a long time, especially in club culture, to go back to what we considered a normal, and this pandemic might not be like a seldom event. It might actually happen again in the near future, and we gotta have to accept and expect it. Is there workarounds that you, as the professionals in this case, would say that we could work differently than just streaming?
Well, to be honest with you, we haven't dug in too deep into that matter so far, but we definitely will, and will have to do in the future, because I think that, I mean, I'm not saying streaming is a bad thing, honestly. I'm really happy that clubs are doing that, and that you can see all the series that you want. It's a great thing. It's just that I think we have to establish better ways on doing so. For example, the servers, instead of placing that, I don't know, in California, they could be more in the north where it's already cold, which some companies actually already do. And they could be, instead of being fueled by coal energy, they could be fueled by green energy sources. So it's, you know, I think as you as producers could, well, if at some point you can really choose where the server is, then of course you can have a look with which energy they are provided. So
this might be a stupid question, but if I imagine every person in this world would move their servers to a cooler place, wouldn't that actually kind of warm up the place? In the worst case scenario, we're trying to fight global warming.
Yeah.
Isn't that also not good? Like,
well, to be honest, that would be a little bit of a speculation.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's in the end, it would definitely be better to have them in a cooler place than instead of cooling them down in a hot place where it takes a lot of energy just to cool them down, much more energy. But you know, one solution is to actually delete. I know it sounds scary, but delete things. We tend to make copy of a copy of a copy and many pictures, and so it really the data just keeps growing, and we don't even need all that data sometimes. And it's really a little bit also about us, how we discipline ourselves, and then maybe sometimes we should, I don't know, do Marie Kondo with our desktop.
with our data, basically.
Yeah, with our data. So
maybe
does it spark joy? Maybe.
Maybe there will be a show, or we could make it a program. Yeah, Konstanze, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
And we're going to hear a little bit more of Leopold now. He's going to perform the song This. And yeah, Leopold, let's hear some new music.
Yay.
You know, as always, it's live, so it might take a moment for Leopold to pop up. But I'm sure he's on his way. Yeah. Just use these moments to get another snack, another drink, mix yourself a cocktail. It's Friday night. Maybe there's a question you want to ask us. No, not really.
No, but I liked your questions a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're just gonna enjoy this moment of quiet and peace.
Yeah. Not producing any data.
Not producing any data.
Oh, here he
not
is.
wasting any streaming time on me talking nonsense. But I think Leopold is ready for us now, so enjoy the track.
Promises are burned to dust. We throw the ashes on our trust. This battle seems to be lost. Hey, what's done is done. Words are bullets to our guns. I hate what we've become. We can't deny the glam is gone. Hey, what's gone is gone. There's no smoke without a fire. Will we get over it? I feel like I should quit. You made me look like I'm a liar. Can't take the blame no more. What are we fighting for? Thought we had talked about this. Thought we have talked about this. Can't keep up with your pace. You're running too fast, is it too late to fix the bond that slowly breaks? Hey, what's done is done. Can we start all over? We're both too proud to bleed. We're drunk on vanity. Now that we're getting sober, I've come to realize we haven't even tried. Let's talk about this. Thought we have talked about this. This, no. Why do we care for each other? Why are we hurting each other? We shouldn't be like enemies. We shouldn't fight against each other. Why don't we listen to each other? Why don't we understand each other? This ain't the way, it's better to stay and work it out together. We should care for each other. We should be there for each other. We should work, we should act, we should love like brothers. We should forgive each other. We should lift each other up, cause we will need the energy to work it out. Let's talk about this. Why do we know each other? Why do we understand each other? This ain't the way it's better to stay and work it out together.
Leo, Leo, Leo. Das war super.
Thank you.
So we're going to switch to English once more, so everyone is included. Tell us a little bit about the song This. What does it mean to you? What was the idea behind it?
It means a lot to me because there are so many subjects and themes included in the song. Mostly it's about hate speech and about being who you are and talking about that. It's about queer visibility, which is like actual as it is these days. I mean, if we look over the pond to America, it's all about black visibility and also about black queer visibility. So yeah, it means everything. It could mean everything or nothing.
Mm. Is you singing tracks like this, is it a way to also work through your feelings, work through the hate that you're receiving? How is it to be like a public figure, putting your art, part of your heart out there, your emotions? Yeah, how does that feel and how do you process these emotions with your music?
Definitely through music. I mean, everything that I've experienced throughout the years, I put into my work, I put into my songs, and I kind of think of like I guess like every musician, music is also a therapy and to go through things and complete different like things that you've experienced your whole life, and it's also with me. Yeah.
Would you say your music has also empowered your queer visibility, claiming yourself to be a gender fluid person or considering yourself a queer person? How has that impacted you as a being?
It made me proud of myself, and it made me stronger, and also gave me the strength and the courage to show myself the way I am, and to be like this,
be fabulous, amazing.
Like thank you. So yeah, it's a process of freedom, and that's beautiful about that.
Thank you for sharing that process and this music with us.
Thanks.
We're going to go to our next point, which is going to talking about urban planning, urban spaces. We have Jonas, Florian, and Johannes here. They're going to talk a little bit about a project called Clubtopia. It's about a tool that makes you find clubs, that makes you experience and explore urban spaces. And yeah, I would like to say, let's move sets. I'm not going to talk anymore. You've heard enough of me so far, so let's give some room for the guys.